Hello, everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I'm Alexis Alcott, the UMC Interim Program Coordinator, and we're so excited to have you join us today as we celebrate 25 years of marriage celebrations in 2023. In today's webinar, we're so excited to be joined by Dr. Jeremy Boden. Jeremy is married to his wife, Daria, and has 4 children together. They love to relax, try new restaurants, watch their favorite TV shows, and go to Disneyland as a family. Jeremy is an associate professor of family sciences at Utah Valley University, where he teaches courses in marriage and relationships, human sexuality, family dynamics, and couples therapy in the Marriage and Family Graduate Program. He is also a licensed marriage and family therapist and maintains a small private practice in Provo, Utah. He has created an online premarital course for Christian and LDS couples. Jeremy is currently in the process of creating an online relationship education course for currently married couples. In his webinar today, you'll learn how communication is one of the most frequent reasons for couples to seek therapy and relationship education. And today we'll be exploring his research on couples communication, why they struggle, and the reconnection and repair discussion that can help couples create better understanding. If you have any questions, please ask them by entering your questions to the Q&A function. It's down at the bottom of your screens. The chat will be turned off during the whole process of this webinar, so it's really the best place to ask Jeremy any questions that you might have. We will have that Q&A section at the end of our presentation for the last 15 minutes. So write down your questions and save them for the end. If you have joined us today for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end of the presentation. The survey needed for your credit will automatically load onto the screen, and then you'll receive an email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You may also email the Utah Marriage Commission to receive your survey on this webinar. That email is marriagecommission@usu.edu. Once the survey is completed, you'll obtain an email with your CEU credit certification. We'll now turn the time over to Jeremy for his presentation. Welcome, Jeremy.
Oh, thank you so much, Alexis. I'm really honored and grateful to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, if that's okay. And I will turn this on. So let's just jump right in. I'm actually in my therapy office right now, where I just finished working with a couple. So all of this is kind of fresh on my mind. And it's become a passion for me to teach this to couples, and also I teach this in my classes, and I work a lot with premarital couples, and so I love teaching this to them as well. So as she said, yeah, if you have any questions, just go ahead and put it in the chat, the question and answer, or you can write them down and ask at the end. And I'll do my best to leave enough time at the end so that we can have plenty of questions, or plenty of time for questions. So I was telling Alexis just before that I kind of teach this one-on-one with couples. And so I've actually never taught it in this format before, as far as like a PowerPoint. And so a lot of it is discussion and them working through it together with me, and me kind of coaching them and processing with them. So this is kind of new. So I spent much of this week kind of working today and this whole week working on this PowerPoint. It is a little heavy on the PowerPoint, I will say that. I'll just come out and say that right now. And I'm happy to share this PowerPoint with Alexis, and she can share it with whomever as well. It's nothing that I don't mind being out in the public with this. So you can access it through that, or you can email me also, and I'm happy to share it with you. So with that, let's just jump right into this. What I've learned, really, I specialize in working with couples. That's my area. I teach at UVU all about couples communication and relationship development, and I work a lot, as I said, with premarital couples, and we spend a lot of time on the topic of communication. And so one of the things that we know from the research, and really from my own practice, is that all couples have problems. I often will tell, if you find me a couple that you think is perfectly happy, give me an hour with them, and I'll find kind of their areas of struggle, because that's what I do. I'm there to kind of mine through with couples as far as where their biggest hurts are, where they're struggling, where they feel disconnected. And so all couples, and believe me, you would be surprised, some of the couples that come into my office, you'd think, oh, they must have a perfect marriage if you knew them outside. But, everybody has some challenges here and there. And so conflict and failure, disconnections, misunderstanding, disappointments, it's the inevitable part of the growth process that all of us go through. And this is one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Dan Weil when he says, when choosing a long-term partner, you will inevitably be choosing a particular set of unsolvable problems that you'll be grappling with for the next 10, 20, or 50 years. That's a very affirming quote, normalizing quote, but it's also a little bit discouraging, knowing that you're going to have issues. I often will tell even my couples, I'll say, I do this for a living. I teach this for a living. And my wife and I, we don't have a perfect marriage. We have a really good marriage, but gosh, we still have disconnections and misunderstandings and disappointments and things like that. So conflict, really, it doesn't mean there's a lack of love in the relationship. It usually means that someone is not feeling safe or seen in the relationship. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And so what I really help couples do is to help them lean into the conflict, unpack the conflict, and use it then to reconnect rather than avoiding it, using it to blame, using it to shut down, pull away, but leaning into that conflict with communication and using it to reconnect. And so what I've also found with couples is we all want our perspective and our experience to be heard. We all want our perspective and experience to be validated as well as understood. And I have found in my work with couples is if I can get them to that point where they're communicating to that level of, I now feel more heard, my perspective feels validated, and I absolutely feel seen by my partner, I feel understood, things start to slow down because emotions and conflict can feel really quick. Things start to slow down and people start to slow down and they soften. Okay? And that's what we want. We also want to feel, all of us want to feel that we matter. We want to feel that we matter to our partner. That I had one client many, many years ago just say, sometimes I don't know that I'm on his radar. And I've always remembered that. We want to be on our partner's radar, that they're thinking about us, that we feel valued by them, that we feel matter, that we matter to them, and that we feel accepted by them. And so that's a lot of times when communication goes awry is when we don't feel heard, we don't feel understood, we don't know if we matter to our partner, or we don't feel accepted by them. That's where things start to take a turn. And so one of the things that I really am intentional about teaching couples is what I call relational humility. And what relational humility is that when miscommunications happen, when there's a disappointment, a disconnection, a misunderstanding, that both of you practice this relational humility that looks like, what it looks like is you think to yourself, I might be wrong here. I don't think I am, but I'm going to leave open the possibility that I could be wrong here. The second part of it is I don't have my partner, the full perspective of my partner, and I need to seek that with curiosity. Okay. And so if we recognize I might not have the full picture, okay, and that I could be wrong here, then we can move into that space with greater clarity and greater curiosity if we move into that relational humility. And then finally with this is that when we feel like that our partner's needs are just as important as our own, okay, that what they're needing to get out of this experience is just as important as mine. Okay, that's what relational humility is. Okay, so why do couples kind of struggle with communication? Well, what we know is from the beginning, in the beginning of a relationship, a lot of times we're flooded with what's sometimes called the dopamine drench. all these chemicals, neurochemicals, norepinephrine, dopamine, oxytocin, and we are just flooded with these positive emotions. And so we give generous assumptions, we give these positive illusions and give our partner the benefit of the doubt all the time. And we're often on our best behavior. But then what happens is over time, as the marriage continues or relationship continues, we're going to have isolated hurts here or there. We're going to feel misunderstood. We're going to feel invalidated. And what happens is we start to move into what are called these rigid patterns of disconnection. Okay. And couples often get stuck in those. And it becomes really debilitating to the relationship. And what I've learned as I've worked with couples is because we're wired for connection, we want to be connected to our partner, that when we don't feel that, we will seek protection. And a lot of times what that looks like is we utilize what's called our protective adaptive strategies, which are usually either to pursue our partner with frustration, with criticism, pursue them with a concern, an issue, or we shut down and we withdraw, or we get defensive, okay? If you want to, a really good, I get into this a lot more in a webinar that I gave a year or two ago called Securely Attached. That's a really good one to watch in addition to this one, because I give a lot of background on all of those kind of adaptive strategies and things like that. So that's a good one to watch. And so what I've created to help couples is kind of a structured process that I call the Reconnection and Repair Discussion. And we're going to talk about that. Okay. So there's 3 types of reconnection discussions, and I'm only going to go over one, and that's the third one here. But what I have found is that couples will often, there's this type 1 where couples can do a quick fix. Okay, they've had a disconnection. And so it's this acknowledgement of responsibility and misunderstanding. So you go to your partner and say, hey, I'm so sorry, that came out wrong. Okay, and I really apologize. I didn't mean it to come out like that. That's a quick fix. Hey, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I know you didn't mean to. Okay, quick fix, 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Type 2 is where it's kind of this reminder. Okay. And a reminder of clarification of fears, insecurities, or raw spots. And I'll define what raw spots are in just a minute. And there's also this apology and reassurance. And now type 3 is, this is what we're going to delve into a lot more. If you can do type 3, type 1 and type 2 discussions are much easier. Okay. And this is where you're going to intentionally bring up a topic or issue or concern. You're going to identify the fears, insecurities, or raw spots, and you're going to practice and use deep empathy, gentleness, compassion, listening, understanding. And as I said earlier, if you can do this, and again, you don't have to do this every day, but as you get in a practice of this and learn from your partner, type 1 and type 2 discussions are going to become a lot easier to do, and you're not going to feel like you're constantly in conflict or having disconnections and things, okay? Because you can repair pretty quickly. Okay. So what this is a step-by-step collaborative, and it's highly structured. And I want to emphasize that because I think sometimes when I teach them this, I feel like, man, this is really rigid. This feels mechanical. This feels unnatural. And I say, absolutely. 100%, I designed it that way. A lot of times in active listening and seminars, they'll talk about the speaker listener technique or active listening. It's basically that, but on steroids, and we go much deeper. So it's a step-by-step, it's very collaborative, and it's highly structured and on purpose. And it's really grounded in a lot of research on attachment, on communication, and this idea of what we all want and need to feel seen. As I said earlier, we want to feel understood and accepted and feel safe meeting that need, okay, that I can get that need met. So with this, much like the speaker listener, I like to call them the reacher and the receiving partner. And you're going to take turns on this, okay? Meaning one person will be the reacher through the whole process and one person will be the receiving partner. And then you can switch if you want to, okay? One of the ways that I kind of, if you've ever ridden a bike when you were little and you had training wheels, that those training wheels were a little bit restrictive, that you couldn't make sharp turns with them. That's how this is. It is highly structured, rigid process, and it trains you on some of the attributes that you need to have. It trains you on some of the skills that you also need to have, and kind of pulls them together to create what we often will call a corrective emotional experience. I often talk to my couples a lot about that in my sessions with them and outside of sessions, if they can have these corrective emotional experiences, and what I mean by that they feel, they experience empathy, they experience their partner validating them, they experience feeling understood. That's what changes the neural pathways in our brain. That's what creates new neural pathways, that now I know that you're a safe person. And I can now give you generous assumptions that you didn't mean to say that. And we don't have to have these long discussions. But those corrective emotional experiences often come with these types of discussions. So I will say this, that if I had a couple come into me that were on the brink of divorce, they hadn't talked for a week, or they are fighting every single day, being contemptuous, being mean, this probably wouldn't work for them. Okay, it might, but it would be really, really hard for them. And so I have found that this works best when there is just a general goodwill, meaning I do care about you. You are my friend. I do love you. I'm frustrated with you a lot of the time, but at the end of the day, I do care about you. That's when this is going to work best. Okay. But if there is this contempt towards one another, this would be really hard to do. And when both partners feel a sense of calm, they feel rested, and they feel, well fed, as you know. So those three things is when this is going to work the best. And so with this, there is the attributes that are needed in this are humility, or relational humility, kindness and understanding, and the skills that you're really going to need to practice. And I'm going to help you with this, and I give examples of what that's going to look like, is validation, empathy, compassion, and listening. Okay. So a few definitions as I go through this and show you this step by step. It's important to look at a few definitions. First, I talk a lot about fears and insecurities and what are called raw spots. Again, I talk about this more in my lecture or my webinar on being securely attached. Raw spots and fears and insecurities, these are usually difficulties in our life where we experience deep disconnection, and it can come from our family of origin, our family background. It can even come from past romantic relationships or even our current romantic relationships. So this is where we felt just a deep sense of, maybe a sense of abandonment, deep sense of insecurity. We're fearful of something. I had a client once that just his parents were always fighting. And so his biggest fear was, are we going to become like that? That's kind of a raw spot. That's a fear and insecurity. Okay. Then we talk about these protective adaptive strategies or protective attachment adaptive strategies. And basically these are things like criticism, yelling, defensiveness, shutting down, withdrawing, things like that. And the reason we do this is because it's our way of managing difficult emotions and regulating a disconnection. Okay. Because again, as I mentioned, we're wired for connection. That's our way to manage those disconnections. Again, not the most effective way, but in those moments, it's sometimes our best strategy is to be critical, to be defensive, to shut down. And then finally, I talk a lot about this is the 3 S's of connection, or what are sometimes called the core attachment needs. And this is really that at the end of the day, all of us need to feel safe, emotionally safe. We need to feel seen and accepted, and we need to feel soothed if needed. So safe, seen, and soothed. Okay. So let's jump into kind of the core goals of the reconnection and repair discussion. Overall, the goal is to really come away feeling more connected and feeling a sense of understanding. And one of the things I talk to couples a lot about as they start this discussion, and they can go back to these questions, is what do I really want the outcome to be of this discussion right now? What do I really want from my partner? And what do I really want for our relationship? You notice it's kind of, it's focused on myself, but it's also focused on my partner and our overall relationship. What do I want? You know, I want to feel understood. What do I want my partner? Well, I want my partner to feel like I love them and I care about them and that they matter. And for our relationship to feel like there's a sense of continuity in our connection. Okay. So when it gets difficult, you can go back to these questions. Okay. When things in the midst of the discussion, because it may not go smoothly, you can go, okay, let me pull back a little bit. What do I really want? What do I want from my partner? What do I want for our relationship? And what do I want for myself right now? Okay. So here's some guidelines that I give to both the receiving or the reaching and the receiving partner. So one of the things is to practice this tone of gentleness, because the reaching partner is the one that's going to be bringing up the issue, bringing up the concern, the topic. Okay. Make sure that when you're sharing your perspective to be brief and succinct, use I statements. Give grace and charity of your partner, your receiving partner, because they're working really, really hard. And they have a little bit greater lion's share of the work in this discussion. The receiving partner really has to do a lot of work in this. So the reaching partner really needs to give them a lot of grace and charity for the work that they're trying to do. And allow for a timeout or a pause. If things get overwhelming, let's go back to the questions. What do I really want? What do I want from my partner? What do I want from the relationship? Okay, so for the receiving partner is to assume a longing to connect. And what I mean by that is under every complaint or frustration from your partner that's coming at you, because they're reaching for you. They're reaching for you. And so underneath that is a longing to connect. I need to keep that in my mind. This is hard to hear. I want to get defensive, but I know that underneath this complaint, underneath this frustration of theirs, I feel a little bit attacked, but I know that they're just longing to reconnect with me, and I need to keep that in mind. And so I'm going to practice these connecting attributes of curiosity. I'm really, really interested in their perspective, because if I'm interested and I show that, they're going to soften, and they're going to feel greater. They're going to feel understood. So using understanding, using empathy and compassion. And this is a big one. Agreement is not the goal of this. Okay. And more particularly, it's not the goal to get to the point where you agree 100% with the reaching partner's perspective. That's not the goal. Your goal is to really just to convey a sense of understanding that their perspective is valid according to their experience. And that I think if I was in that, I can see why you felt misunderstood, why you felt hurt. And I'm going to offer compassion. Nowhere in there does it say you need to tell your partner, you were 100% right, I was 100% wrong, and I don't know why you married me. Okay. And nowhere is that. So agreement is not the goal. It's really just conveying understanding and validating. And so another one that happens when I've worked with people using this is this, they really try to make it better. Well, no, that's not what I meant. Well, what if I just do this? That's not about, you've got to resist that temptation to make excuses or to try to make things better at the very beginning. Okay. All you're really doing is just leaning in with curiosity, conveying understanding, showing empathy and compassion. And at the end of the day, helping them feel safe, seen, and if necessary, soothed. Okay. We ready? So let's get into this. So this are the steps, and this is the hard part. This is where I found some couples get a little bit bogged down in this because they feel like, oh, this is a lot. And it feels a little bit confusing, but I'm going to try to unpack it in a simple way, in the simple way that I can. I wish I was in front of all of you just one-on-one, and you could ask questions and we could collaborate together. But here's where it starts. So the reaching partner, the goal in the first step is to listen and take in, and I'll share what that means in just a second. Describe the topic or issue and your goal. So for the receiving partner, their goal is to create a foundation of safety, appreciation, and to sharing curiosity or being curious. So to set the foundation of safety, this is what I have found can be really, really helpful for the receiving partner. Knowing that the reaching partner is coming to them with an issue, with a concern. So you're sitting down together, you're comfortable. I will often have couples kind of do a body scan, kind of where are they right now? Where are they feeling tension in their body? And then kind of check that at the end. So this is an example of what the receiving partner might say at the very beginning. As we start this, I want you to know that I'm going to do my best to help you feel safe and help you feel that you matter right now. So that's the safety piece. I know that there might have been things you share that will be hard for you to say, and it'll actually probably be hard for me to hear. But I'm going to do my best to remain present and to help you feel understood. Okay, so that's the foundation of safety. I mean, can you imagine if your partner, if you came to them with a concern, an issue, and again, this is where you've got to set aside time for this. This isn't a 5-10 minute discussion. This is a 15, 20 minute, 25 minute discussion, okay, where you limit distractions and things like that. But can you imagine if you're the reaching partner and you have a concern and your partner, the first thing they said to you was, hey, I'm going to do my best to understand you. And I know this is going to be hard for you, but it's going to be hard for me too. And I'm going to do my best to help you feel. I mean, can you imagine the level of just kind of relief in that moment that would happen? So then take in that intent for safety. Maybe even show some thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. And then you're going to briefly describe and succinctly describe the topic from a place of gentleness and softness, avoiding accusations, avoiding blaming and things like that. So then here, the receiving partner, your goal is to be open and understanding and responsive. And so for the reaching partner, this is what it's going to look like. I'd like to talk to you about, and this is just an example, about what happened tonight at Sarah's party with our friends and what you said about my job. I love you and I want to feel connected again because of how much you and our relationship mean to me. I know that you will have your perspective too, and I want to hear that as well when you're the reaching partner or when we switch. So then allow your partner to reflect back what they just heard. So this is what the receiving partner can say, reflecting back. Thank you for sharing that with me. That shows appreciation. I can see this was tough for you, and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to understand your perspective. Okay, so that offers that safety there. Again, can you see how this right at the beginning creates a lot of safety for both people, for both partners here, and it's going to help you both to regulate. For the receiving partner, anytime they feel blamed, they may have the temptation to move into the protective strategy of getting defensive or shutting down, or maybe going with a cross criticism or a counter criticism. But it is structured here to say your goal is just to be curious, to be understanding, and just to reflect what you're getting. Okay, so then the step 2. So now the reaching partner is going to describe their emotions, thoughts, and behaviors when the event occurred or when the issue or topic comes up. Okay, so as the receiving partner, your goal here is to be open, to be understanding and responsive. So here's what a reaching partner might say. Tonight, when we were with our friends, you said that my job shouldn't take any training because anyone could do it after a day on the job. In that moment, I just shut down. So that's the behavior. They shut down because I felt humiliated. So that's the emotion. And I wondered, so here's the thought, why would he say such a thing? Okay. So this is where the receiving partner can now take that in. Okay, I'm going to reflect that back to make sure I got it. So then they're going to allow them to reflect back. Thank you for sharing. So again, can you imagine your partner when you shared this difficult thing that may sound blaming if your partner said, you know what, thank you for bringing this up. Let me see if I'm getting what you're saying. So I'm showing interest. When we were hanging out with our friends tonight, and I said your job was easy, that's when you shut down. And in that moment, you felt humiliated. And you couldn't believe I'd say such a thing. Did I get that? So that conveys the curiosity. Did I get that? Am I getting it? Okay. Hearing you share it with me, I can see why you shut down. Now that's the validation of this. I can see why. At no point did they say, you're 100% right, and I'm a jerk, okay? It just was like, yeah, I can see why that might have been hard. That must have been difficult when I said that. That offers empathy. This helps me understand a bit more, and I want to know more about your experience. So that shows greater interest and safety. So again, this is setting up each partner to reflect back, to feel safe, to feel understood, and just create more connection. Because again, as the reaching partner, you're going to go, okay, I feel safer now to keep going. So step 3 is where you're going to talk now about the message that you got, the deeper emotions and attachment. So you're going to share the meaning or message you got in that moment. And how I explain this to couples is you can start to say, I know you didn't say this, but this is the message that I got. And I'll give you an example of what it looks like in just a second. And you're going to share a deeper, more vulnerable emotion, such as sadness or hurt. And why this was especially difficult to experience. And this is an important key here. From someone you care about. That's why it was so hard. Okay? If this was just a checker at a gas station, it wouldn't have mattered to me because I don't know them. But because I care about you so much and we're in this relationship, that's why it hurt. So here's an example. So this is where the receiving partner's job is. This is where theirs comes in. This is, again, you're going to be open. You're going to be understanding. You're going to be responsive and focus on the message that they got and the deeper emotion they shared. And then you're going to reflect back. So here's the example statement. I think the message I got when you said that was, my husband doesn't respect me or my job, and that really hurts. So that's the message that they got. Their partner never said that, but that's what they felt. And that is 100% valid. We can't argue with the person's perspective. Now, we can talk about it later on, and the receiving partner can say, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I was being, I took it too personally. That's later on. Okay? They can't do that right now. They have to feel safe and seen. They have to feel like they have to feel understood. So it was tough to think about, and I think it just hurts. It was especially hurtful because it came from the person I care about the most. And so you can see here, when they say things like that, the receiving partner is going to go, wow, okay, that feels better to me. I don't feel as accused. I don't feel as blamed. And so then allow your partner to reflect back the meaning and message. And so this is what it might look like for the receiving partner. This is really helpful for me to hear. I had no idea that was going on for you. I feel terrible. That was the message you got from me, and how much hurt that caused. All of this, and you can see now that leads to the next one, because now they're feeling safer and they're going to take more risks now. So now they're going to talk about a fear, an insecurity, a raw spot that came up, and their protective adaptive strategy. So share in the moment you believe you were most impacted emotionally. Could have been a fear or an insecurity or raw spot that was triggered for you. So then share the adaptive strategy that you utilize. For example, shutting down, getting critical, getting frustrated, whatever that might be. So usually it's something you can see. But and so you might practice some humility and your impact on them. I'll show an example of what I mean by that. And again, going back to the receiving partner, you got one job here, to be open. Your partner is taking a huge risk. They're being very, very vulnerable right now. So you are going to be there for them. You're going to be open. You're going to be understanding. You're going to be responsive. You can see again how structured this is. But as I tell couples, the more you do this, the easier it's going to become. And you don't have to be so structured, but you know the basic premises of it and what you want to get out of it. So focus on what was most difficult. So here's an example statement from the reaching partner. I think I was triggered the most when you laughed about my job, as if it was a joke. I've shared with you, so here comes the raw spot or insecurity or fear. I've shared with you in the past that I was always trying to live up to my parents' expectations. So this came from a family of origin, family background. So I think that raw spot of feeling like a failure was bumped in that moment, and I just felt devastated. That's an important word to think. Wow, they felt devastated. That's when I shut down to manage the pain, and I was quiet for the rest of the night. I also know that it was probably difficult for you to see and try to comfort me, but also be present at the party. So there's where the reaching partner can also show some humility. That I know this was probably hard for you because you were trying to entertain, you were trying to pay attention to our guests or to our friends and that were there, but you also saw that I was hurt. And so I get that why that was hard. Again, can you see how that's going to make it easier for the receiving partner to be open, to be understanding? If all they're getting is blame, 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 criticism, criticism, it's going to make their job much harder. Okay. In fact, when I've had couples do this, I will sometimes even have where they can take notes as they're hearing their partner. Both of them kind of take notes of what they're feeling with and then share them. Don't have to do that, but that can be helpful just to slow this down. And so now you're going to allow your partner to reflect back. So here's a possible response from the receiving partner. I know you've shared that insecurity with me before and how painful it was for you, and that it continues to be. I can see now what I said caused so much pain for you. It makes sense for me. And yes, it was tough to see you shut down and not know what happened. I know I could have been more tuned into what happened to you. You are more important to me than any friends at the party. I mean, can you imagine in that moment? I know I keep saying this, but if your partner who you are coming to taking a huge risk said to you, I just need you to know right now that you are more important to me than any friends at the party. I mean, how validating, how compassionate, how empathic that would be. And again, as you're taking this huge risk. Okay, step 5. So now you're going to move into kind of one of the most vulnerable parts of this, your biggest fear that came up. And it can be helpful to think about what might be under the emotions, like the frustration or anger or anxiousness or worry. What was really under them? Now your partner is about to take a huge risk, or they just took a huge risk, this vulnerable feel. How can you help them feel understood? So here's an example statement. With that raw spot, feeling humiliated and devastated, I think my biggest fear is that if you don't respect me, or if I'm a failure in your eyes, you won't love me anymore and I'll lose you. That's really scary for me. Okay, so that is their catastrophic fear. So there's a receiving partner. You are just going to take that in. You are going to listen to that biggest fear for them. Wow. That for them losing me, that I will see them as a failure and I won't love them. That is huge. So I have absolutely got to show understanding and empathy in that. So this is what this could look like. Wow. There was a lot going on for you. You felt humiliated. So this is the reflecting back, and you felt like a failure. And to hear that you felt like maybe in that moment, I wouldn't love you anymore. That must have been so extremely difficult. Although this is hard to hear, I'm really, really glad you're sharing this with me. It helps me understand you so much more. Again, you're just wrapping them with empathy and compassion, especially because they just shared something so, so vulnerable. Okay. So step 6, now you're going to share. We're now moving on to, now that you feel understood as a reaching partner, you're going to talk about maybe what you needed in that moment to feel seen, to feel known, to feel seen. Okay, now you can go back to the 3 S's, feel safe, seen, and soothed. So you might also share, you don't have to here because you're going to do a little bit at the end, but you might also share a behavior that could accompany your emotional need. And I'll give an example what this looks like. So your partner is now going to take another risk and share what they need from you or what they needed from you in that moment. So how can you help them feel understood? How can you help them feel empathy from you and compassion? So here's what it might look like from the reaching partner. Let me say that I know that you didn't mean to create those feelings in me and to bump my raw spot. So that is huge. So that's offering that grace. That is offering lots of charity. And again, that's going to soften the receiving partner and make it easier for them to take in your experience, to want to be empathic, to want to be understanding. I think what I need from you right now is I just need to know that you do respect me and that you do love me. Maybe if you see me shutting down, maybe come over and check in on me. So that would be the behavior. That would feel really reassuring to me. Even if you just came and checked in on me. Hey, are you okay? I could also use a hug right now. Okay. The reaching partner is probably feeling very vulnerable. You don't have to do this, but these are just examples. So what about their experience can be validated? How can you reflect back? So here's what they might say. Thank you so much for sharing this with me, and what you need from me. So that's the appreciation. Yes, I love and respect you so much. That's a responsiveness. And I'm sad that you got that message that I didn't, but now that you've shared all of this, I can, that's a typo there. I can see why it was. There's a missing word there. I can see why it was humiliating. Devastating. So you're practicing humility and openness. I will also do better about noticing when you shut down and offering a reassurance. Again, more humility, more openness, and gives the partner a hug. So that's the responsiveness. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. So last step in this before we move to 8. Okay, so share your appreciation for your partner, accept responsibility for the disconnection, some of the responsibility, express any hopes you have. And so this is what it's going to look like. Here you're going to express some appreciation. Thank you for listening, for being here for me. It meant a lot for me to share my thoughts and feel understood. And here's where you're going to share some responsibility. As I've been sharing with you, one of the things I've realized is that I need to be careful to not take things so personally. Now, let me stop here, because the reaching partner cannot get to this place of accepting some level of responsibility unless they feel safe and seen and understood and accepted. They're not going to do that. But when they do feel those things from you as the receiving partner, they are going to be in a place where they can say, hey, I know this wasn't I know this didn't, that I wasn't an innocent bystander in all this, that I contributed some of this. And I realize that I need to be careful not to take things so personally. As I said earlier, I know you didn't mean to give me that message. So again, offering grace and charity here. I need to give more generous assumptions towards you in that moment and then bring it up later. And so my hope is that after this, I feel more hope that we can reconnect and repair from our disconnections. I also hope you know how much I love you and I'm glad you're in my life. Okay. Now the receiving partner, they're going to show some appreciation, accept some responsibility. And it might look like this. Thank you for taking such a huge risk. You did great. And this has really helped me understand you better. I'm glad you felt understood. Hearing what you've shared, I know that I need to be more aware of my words or how my words come across and that they can be hurtful. And I'm really sorry. I love you and you mean so much to me. I also hope that we can move forward with a better idea of how to reconnect and repair. Now, at this point, what I sometimes have couples do is then they switch roles. They can bring up another issue or the receiving partner can share their perspective. And so then the reaching partner now has to take that place of being open, being validating, being empathic, all of those things, okay? But if they both feel like, you know what, I don't need to, or the receiving partner says, it's fine, you can move on to step 8, which is now being collaborative to start to discuss how can we prevent these discussions in the future. And at this point, you can do a kind of a body scan. How do I feel now compared to where we were just before step 1? You know, hopefully at this point, you feel calm, you feel understood, validated, and thus more reconnected and repaired. And so now when you have greater understanding and feeling reconnected, you can now discuss how to prevent these disconnections and focus on the process. So I'm going to give you an example of what this might look like. So the reaching partner could say, so after they've gone through all the steps, they say, as I said, I think I need to trust you. You didn't mean to hurt me in that moment, and come to you and share my thoughts with you rather than just shutting down and hope you notice me. Okay. Then maybe we could discuss it more later when it's more private. I think I can also just remember that it's my own insecurities coming up and I need to notice that quicker. And then the receiving partner might say, yeah, now that I know your fears and raw spots more, I need to be more careful around them. Because I know that's a raw spot for you. I sometimes just say stuff without thinking and I need to be more careful. I also know that when I hurt you and we are in public, you tend to shut down to protect yourself. I need to be more aware of you when you do that and make sure I find you and offer reassurance, I should say offer. So the reaching partner might say, you know, thank you, but I also don't want you to feel like you have to always feel anxious that you hurt me. And this is an important piece because again, if you're in this place of safety, if you feel seen by your partner, you feel accepted, you are going to also say, hey, I don't want you to feel like that all the time, that you're always monitoring me. I mean, that's got to be hard for you. So you know what, I'm going to do better about coming to you and offering you more grace in those moments that you didn't mean to hurt me. You can see this reciprocal kind of collaborative, like, hey, I'm going to be humble here. I'm going to accept some responsibility, but you can only do that if you feel safe and seen. And then finally, yeah, I never meant to hurt you, and I never do. Okay, so here's just a brief rundown of these. So for the steps for the reaching partner is to describe the topic, then share their emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Talk about the deeper message that they got. They may not have heard explicitly, but they kind of, the perception, deeper emotions they feel, and then the fear and insecurity and the protective strategies, then their biggest fear. Then talk about what they needed in that moment or what they need right now. Share your appreciation, take in responsibility of how you may have contributed, talk about hopes and how you care about your partner, and then go to a collaborative plan to repair. Now for the receiving partner, the foundation of safety and appreciation. Well, I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, you can see that now. So somebody has taken over my PowerPoint. So anyways, hopefully we can get back to that. So you can practice this repair and reconnection discussion by choosing a topic that's not too heated. Decide who's going to be the reacher. And I don't know, I'm going to stop sharing this because somehow something is taking over this. So that was basically it. And you can practice using it. So I'm going to stop there. I don't know, something took over my PowerPoint, but it was essentially done. So I went through that pretty quickly because I wanted to give lots of opportunities for questions, because I know it was a lot here. So did everybody see that? Could you see it on your end?
Yeah, I could see it. It was kind of acting weird and you were going in and out. Sorry about that technical difficulty, guys. And sorry, Jeremy, about that too. Thanks for sticking with us through it. While we're just waiting for some questions to come in, once again, the Q&A function is at the bottom of your screens. Please go ahead and put in a question. I just want to give Jeremy a quick opportunity to plug any other resources that you guys could go to be able to know more about what Jeremy has to offer and his other programs, such as Securely Attached that I showed in the chat. But just give you kind of some time to plug that while questions are coming in.
Yeah, you know, over the years, I do a lot of couples therapy. I'm leaning a lot more with doing premarital counseling. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing as well. And I've hired some therapists and trained them in that. And so that's one thing that I've been doing a lot just to help couples prepare more for marriage. And so that's something I enjoy. I don't have any specific resources beyond that. I really, you know, anything around attachment, any books you can get around attachment, especially Dr. Sue Johnson's book on, Hold Me Tight is a fantastic resource for a lot of, kind of the underlying theory that I use. And so that would be one,
Perfect.
So yeah,
Thanks,
any questions that anybody has?
Yeah, so this first one is actually a question that I can go ahead and answer. It says, can you connect us with a source? We may go back and rewatch this. I've loved what I've heard. So we actually offer this on our website, which is strongermarriage.org. And you can go to it and just be able to go to our webinar section, and Jeremy will be able to be uploaded to our archived webinars after this. Probably tomorrow will be when it's offered, and then it will be released on YouTube to the public a year after this presentation. So I hope that answered your question, as well as, like Jeremy said at the beginning of this, if you want to email me or him, just to be able to get more access to this PowerPoint and other resources, please feel free to do that. Another person says, how do we recognize our own isolated hurts? Do you have any ideas for prompting interpersonal questions?
Let me answer the first one. I'm not totally sure about the second one, if I'm understanding that, but really one of the things that I talk when I'm working with couples is our emotions are very much connected to our body. We experience emotions in our body. And so I work with that a lot when I'm working with couples and individuals to really tune into their body. And when they feel an emotional shift in the room and in that moment, they will usually feel it in their body. What I mean by that is like a tightness in their chest, or they'll feel hot, their heart will start to beat faster. They may feel a tension in their shoulders. I often feel emotion in my shoulders. And so in that moment is to start to be mindful. What is going on for me right now? What are my thoughts? What are my emotions? And what am I wanting to do? Am I wanting to shut down? Am I wanting to move forward with anger and frustration? What am I wanting to do? And is this connected in some way to a past hurt? And you can look at that specifically with the thoughts and the emotions. If I'm feeling fear, when did I feel this similar fear in the past? Do I feel sadness? When did I feel this in the past? Okay, so that's how I help couples to really start to identify their fears, their insecurities, their raw spots, tuning into their body, tuning into their emotions and their thoughts, and then just start to really make a list of them, okay? And then share those with your partner, because it's good for you and your partner to be aware of those. So hopefully that answers it. Yeah. Good question.
Perfect. Thank you. The next person says, how do you get a more volatile couple to the point where this will work?
That's a really good question. I think that, and this is what I would say, and I would say if they're really, really volatile, you probably need to get a third person involved. And what I mean by that, a third professional person involved, whether it's some type of therapist, counselor, to moderate them in that moment. If they have experienced lots of trauma, individual trauma, sometimes a couples therapist can be helpful, but sometimes they may need to have their own individual therapy to work with their trauma and then come together and do couples therapy. But if they're really, really volatile, this would be an exceptionally difficult exercise to do. Could you do it? In theory, yes, you could do it in theory, but practically it's going to be really, really difficult because you are going to be triggered left and right. But that's why I implement kind of the pause or the timeout, that you can pause, timeout, kind of regulate, self-soothe for 10, 15 minutes, and then come back to the discussion. But if it's just not working, I would encourage you to go to a couples therapist, and specifically a therapist who has worked with couples and is trained with couples. So great question.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that question. Our next person says, what if our partner is unwilling to do this process?
I thought about this. I actually thought about this. That's such a good question. What I would probably do is take on the role of the receiving partner. And really, you really start to lean into the curiosity and say, that's fine. If you don't want to do this, I just want to make sure that I understand your perspective on any of the frustrations in our marriage. And so you are going to lean heavily into the receiving partner role and just move into it with curiosity, no defensiveness, no rebuttals, okay? And you're almost taking notes on this, saying, okay, let me see if I'm getting this, that you're frustrated about this. You're having a hard time with this. And so at the end of that, if they can see, and you're checking, am I understanding you? Is there anything else? Thank you for sharing this with me. This is actually really helpful. I didn't know this about you. And I can see why that would be. So validation, empathy, compassion. But it's all got to be genuine. And at the end, you can say, I think you can summarize it and say, would you be interested in my perspective on this? Because I love that you shared all this with me. I would also like to share my perspective. And essentially then you share your perspective. And hopefully at that time, because you've been so empathic and compassionate, that they've softened a little bit. That would be my advice around that. That's such a good question, because I know not everybody's going to be totally doing cartwheels down the hall, excited to do this discussion. So.
Our next person says, how do you redirect couples when they keep going back to another problem?
Yeah, when they keep going back to another problem, it's usually a cue for me that they're not feeling understood about that particular problem. Okay, so I will point that out with couples. I'll say, I notice you keep going back to this point, or you keep going back to this. I want to slow this down because it's apparent to me, I'm not positive, so you tell me, you push back on me, it's apparent to me that you don't feel understood around this particular concern or this issue. So our goal now is to help you feel understood, help you feel seen around this. And your partner's goal is to help you feel, because I can tell that's why you keep bringing it up again. So outside of a therapy session, if your partner keeps bringing up something, that's a cue to you to go, okay, they brought this up 3 times. So that's a cue to you to step into the receiving partner and say, okay, I'm not getting you. So my goal for the next 15 minutes is to understand your perspective and to have compassion for that and empathy. I want you to walk away from this experience saying, my partner gets me. That's what I would do with that. Great question.
Perfect. Another person is wondering if you offer online counseling and where you're located.
Yes, and I am located in Provo. Right now, I am completely booked. I know I hate saying that. Everybody's booked right now. I'm going to make a plug. Speaking of plug, I would recommend going to the site NUEFT. It stands for Northern Utah Emotionally Focused Therapy. And on that site, there are lots of fantastic therapists who use a similar model of kind of therapy that I use, emotionally focused therapy, which is, the research shows is the best model for working with couples. And if you're in Utah, if you're outside of Utah, you can go to EFT, just Google EFT therapists in my area, emotionally focused therapists, and you can find somebody. But here in Utah, Northern Utah specifically, you can find therapists who use a similar model. But I am in Provo. And I work at Utah. I work at UVU full time. I mean, that's my main job. So I do a lot of couples therapy on the side, and so I just don't have a lot of room. I wish I did, but I just don't.
Perfect. We'll just do one last question. It says, what if you don't feel very much grace towards your partner in the moment? And they said specifically step 6.
That's a good question. What if I don't feel? That's okay. I mean, just anything that they're doing well, anything at all, just by the fact that they're sitting there with you, you can offer that. Because they could be resistant. They could say, I don't want to be here, and they could walk away. But just the fact that they're staying with you and say, you know, I appreciate that you're just staying here, and show that grace that they're trying their best. And they're engaged in this process, and they're not going to be perfect. They're going to be flawed, like we all are, but just offering that at least they're trying, and that's the grace you can offer, even if it's small. But that's a hard one, and that's a good question. So hopefully that's helpful.
Well, thank you all so much for being on, and thank you so much, Jeremy, for your presentation and your thoughts. I really loved it, and a lot of people commented that they learned a lot and they really loved it as well.
Oh, good.
So thank you so much.
I'm glad it was conveyed well. I was nervous because I've never taught it like this in a PowerPoint before. So hopefully it made sense and for them. So that's good to hear.
Well, it sounds like it did. Sounds like they got what they needed out of it. So I really appreciate that work you put in. And thank you everyone else for joining this webinar and for participating with your questions and just being here today. Once again, if you attended this webinar for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the webinar ends for your survey and certificate, or email into the UMC email for your survey. That email, once again, is marriagecommission@usu.edu. Upon completion, you will get a certification email back from us. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.